In today's video, I wanted to discuss the haunting of the Gateway Inn featured in the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Morrowind has no shortage of creepy and unsettling events that occur within it. The ancestral tombs are often home to abominations such as skeletons, bone walkers, and ghosts. The sixth house itself contains unholy servants and minions that can cause eternal torment to the afflicted. There are Daedric demonic entities that wander around abandoned ruins. Caves are filled with beasts and creatures that could end one's life in a heartbeat. The towns and settlements within the province are often considered safe havens. One would never expect such an experience to happen in the town of Sadrith Mora, no less a recently built inn. Let's talk about the side quest, Gateway Ghost. The quest begins in the aforementioned town of Sadrith Mora. Sadrith Mora has a strong presence of Telvanni wizards, and the arcane arts are sparked within its atmosphere. Wandering around town, the player may decide to stop and speak with one of its residents. Upon asking about the Gateway Inn, you'll become informed that the establishment is the official hostel for outsiders and travelers. Anyone who isn't House Telvanni must stay there for the night, and anyone without the so-called hospitality papers may not walk abroad in Sadrith Mora. Curious, you ask about the latest rumors surrounding the coastal region. If you're lucky, you may become informed of the Gateway Inn hauntings. Apparently, a ghost resides within the south turret bedchamber. It haunts the guests, and no matter how many times it gets driven away or banished, it always comes back. The odd part is that the Gateway Inn is a very recent addition to Sadrith Mora, and therefore is unlikely to hold a restless spirit. They believe that a sorcerer of some kind has to be behind it. Unfortunately for the Gateway Inn, business is lacking due to the recent mishaps, and Garadel, the prefect of hospitality, would really like this matter taken care of. At this point, the player's journal updates. The quest is registered, and it's time to investigate the Gateway Inn and its supposed ghost. The Gateway Inn is located on the western side of town. It's represented by multiple giant shells fused together in order to create a structure. Coming from the eastern side of town, you're likely to see the bronze door to the north wing first. After turning the stone door and peering at the eastern face, you'll see the grand entrance leading to the main area of the inn. Immediately inside, there's a male dark elf waiting in the room, eyeing you down. This is the aforementioned Garadel, the prefect of hospitality. Approaching and speaking with him,
"Speak, traveler."
He introduces himself and asks if you need papers as well as offers of work. Inquiring about the latter, he informs the player of more details regarding the spectral harassment. He confirms that there is a ghost haunting the south turret bedchamber, along with the detail that no matter what's done about it, it keeps coming back. The room can't be rented, and the rest of the guests are all scared. Apparently, Arara Uvalis, Master Naloth's mouth, came to inspect the place. She unfortunately couldn't come to a conclusion on how to end the hauntings, and Garadel offers a reward to you if you can do something about the matter. Inquiring a little further, he says that you're more than welcome to check out the ghost for yourself. It isn't a difficult entity to drive away, but it's the fact that it keeps on returning that makes it dangerous. And Garadel suggests that you go and speak with Arara at the Telvanni Council House for more answers. She also believes that it's a sorcerer who's conjuring up the spirit, and that it isn't actually a real haunting. Exiting the conversation, you ascend up the stairs to the second level. Here, there are a number of guests standing around, conversing with one another. Choosing to speak with one of them in order to see what they have to say, a high elf named Sinyaramen speaks further on the Gateway haunting. He claims to have seen the ghost himself. He confirms that the ghost is aggressive and that it inflicted wounds on one of the other guests. It also apparently reappears in a matter of a few hours. Turning around, the player goes through the door leading to the south wing. In this area, there's an Argonian named Inni, but he offers no unique dialogue. Immediately, you can hear the screeches and growls of the specter. Ascending to the second level, the sounds are coming through a doorway leading to a separate room. You arm yourself and the door flings open. A ghost hurls itself at the player and begins attacking. In my personal experience, the spirit seemed quite strong. It didn't hit too hard, but it certainly had a decent amount of health. I used a dwarven spear and slowly lowered its HP. Eventually, the ghost was defeated, and upon inspection, you'll notice that its name is simply displayed as the Gateway Haunt. It holds no items in its inventory either, further strengthening the claim that it's a conjuration. Inspecting the room, you find a bed, a chest, some plants, and that's about it. There's no obvious signs of a person in here or anything that could summon a spirit. At this point, my lead suspect was the Argonian Inni, as he's the only person in here and seemingly unbothered by the spirit. Now, you decide that you want to see this spirit reappear for yourself. You wait and rest in one of the beds outside of the room. You wait for quite a while, days on end, but there's still no sign of the apparition. You doubt that the issue is solved though and decide to speak with the mouth of Master Naloth, Arara Uvalis. Exiting the Gateway Inn, the player makes way for the Telvanni Council House. The establishment is on the northern side of town and is represented by a unique organic sphere of some sort. Entering inside of the council house, there's a Dunmer in the entrance named Deline Arvel. Just past her is a doorway leading further into the structure. On the other side is quite the magnificent space. A big room filled with crystals, encompassed by the trees and organic materials that make up Telvanni structures. Surrounding the center crystal are 4 Dunmer, each standing on a platform. Upon closer inspection, each person is the representative of one of the masters or mistresses of the house. Looking around, the player lays eyes on the person of interest, Arara Uvalis. She introduces herself and you inquire about the Gateway hauntings. She confirms that she was there to inspect the south turret bedchamber. She thoroughly looked around yet could find no evidence of a restless spirit. She says that it's more than likely the product of a conjuration expert. Unfortunately, she doesn't list any potential suspects, and therefore there are no leads. You begin to ask around the house for more information. None of the other mouths have the Gateway Ghost as a dialogue option. The person who does have some more info on the matter though is Deline, the Dunmer standing just outside. Inquiring about the conjuration expert, no one comes to mind at first for who could fit the bill. Her thoughts then jump to Master Naloth, citing that he could be bitter enough to commit the act, but claims that conjuration isn't his specialty. After a bit, she comes to the realization that no one in Sadrith Mora is that skilled in that arcane art. But she reveals that within the Wolverine Hall, the Imperial outpost on the edge of town, there's a Mages Guild. Within the Mages Guild, there's a sorceress named Uleni Halurin, whom teaches conjuration. Exiting the conversation, the player returns back to the Gateway Inn in order to see if the spirit has returned or not. Ascending to the second floor and entering inside of the south wing, sure enough, you hear the otherworldly screeches and growls.
Summoned by another.
The spirit is still hostile and behaves like it did before. I took it down with magic this time, but it still wasn't necessarily the easiest fight in the world. It would seem as though at this point, my main suspect, the Argonian Inni, might be off the hook. Leaving the inn, the player makes their way over to the Wolverine Hall. It's in the southwestern corner of town, and in of itself feels more adjacent to a settlement than a feature of Sadrith Mora. The Mages Guild is located in the southern tower section. Entering inside of the establishment and into the Mages Guild Hall, you see a crowd of wizards congregating inside. Casing the room, Uleni is standing in the back right corner. Approaching and speaking with her, you ask about the Gateway hauntings. If her disposition is too low, she'll simply respond by saying that it's just ghosts and that she knows nothing about the situation. Raising her disposition to 50 and trying again, she responds in a different manner. She shows disdain for Engaradel, calling him a squeeze-butt, and thinks you're clever to have connected the hauntings to her. She reveals that she has no love for the prefect of hospitality, as he reported her to the magistrate for not having any hospitality papers. She ultimately decides that the joke is losing its humor and that she doesn't want anyone getting hurt. Uleni says she will put a halt to the Gateway hauntings, but first asks you to deliver a letter to Engaradel. Any further discussion on the hauntings has Uleni brainstorming new ideas in order to make his life more miserable. Exiting the conversation, you decide to take a look at the note just handed to you. Certification of ghost-free hospitality by authority of the Super Extra Very Sovereign Council of Mages Without Digits within Bowels. Hereas the Gateway Inn and all its dark and secret places have been found to be completely free of spooks, boojums, snarks, spectral goats, revenant toiletries, or cannibal vampire anchovies. Muthsera, Mistress Dunmer from Faraway Mage Lady, Lord High Inspector of Hostelry for the town of Sadrith Mora, aforesaid, does pronounce the gateway Inn free and clean of all otherworldly, hostile, and malign entities, with the exception of the profound and displeasing odor that arises from the Prefect of Hospitality, which, despite the preternatural magnitude of its offensiveness, may well derive from altogether more mundane sources. Signed, Muthsera, Mistress Dunmer from Faraway Mage Lady, representing the super extra very sovereign Council of Mages without digits within bowels. Getting one last dig in at Engaradel, the player returns to the Gateway Inn and speaks with the Prefect.
I will listen, Outlander, but make it quick.
You inquire about work, and he questions how you know that the hauntings will stop. He asks if it can be proven, and that if you want your reward, he will need some sort of explanation. The player is then prompted with 3 different options. The first is to explain what happened, but withholding Uleni's name. Choosing it will result in a disposition decrease of 20 points for Engaradel. The second option is to explain what happened, but include Eleni's name. This one, coupled with the third option of explaining what happened, including Uleni's name, and handing the note over, result in the same reward of a disposition increase of 30 points. Choosing the third option, Engaradel becomes enraged. He calls her a disgrace and questions her nerve. He wonders how he can be blamed when he was only doing his job, and it was her who failed to obtain her hospitality papers. In the end, he thanks you for your efforts and offers up the reward of one of 3 rings: the Fighter Ring, the Mage Ring, and the Thief Ring, each fortifying their respective attributes of the bearer. Given my character's class, I picked the Mage Ring, and Engaradel closed with saying he will speak highly of my deeds to the other members of House Telvanni. Interestingly, when asked about the Gateway hauntings again, he speaks from the perspective of another NPC and says that Engaradel told him of my accomplishments, citing that it was an embarrassment for their house. Exiting the conversation, you look at the Mage Ring and see that when cast, it fortifies intelligence and willpower both for 5 points for 30 seconds. The hauntings of the Gateway Inn have been put to an end, at least for now, and there's likely a dangerous storm brewing between Engaradel and Uleni. This whole issue spawned due to the Sadrith Mora laws of outsiders needing hospitality papers. So, what are these said papers, and are they hard to acquire? Well, speaking with the Prefect of Hospitality himself, he sheds light on what they're used for. Apparently, local law dictates that in order for outlanders and travelers to conduct business with citizens, tradesmen, or publicans, they must have hospitality papers on them. Where it gets interesting is that the only barrier to acquiring these papers is a small sum of 25 gold. Engaradel offers them for purchase upon speaking with him. It certainly doesn't seem difficult to get them, and something tells me that a conjuration expert within the Mages Guild shouldn't have too much trouble scrounging up 25 gold. A few more details are shed on the matter if the player ultimately had decided to explain the situation and only reveal Uleni's name, withholding the note and ensuring she was still alive. Engaradel lets it slip that she had served jail time for neglecting her papers, and that since then, she's become quite abusive. Clearly, House Telvanni takes these documents seriously, as jail time feels quite excessive for such a logistical matter. However, I personally believe that Uleni was in the wrong, and deserves severe jail time for what she's done. Not only did she negatively impact the business of the officially sanctioned inn of the town, she could have gotten someone killed. That ghost was aggressive and harmful towards the other guests, and if I hadn't been able to defend myself, I would have ended up dead. Due to her personal tensions with Engaradel, which she was in the wrong for to begin with, she actively summoned an ethereal being, which targeted the innocent guests and residents of the Gateway Inn. Unfortunately, the only resolution to this situation is if you take the matter into your own hands and slay Uleni, but there's surely to be repercussions for that. With all of the details laid out, thus ends the quest, Gateway Ghost.